Hello everybody and welcome to week number 14 of the 2017 college football season. It is conference championship week and a couple of random games as well. I think Sun Belt's finishing up and Florida State has a makeup game, I believe. Anyway, let's just go ahead and jump into this video. Of course, starting with last week's picks, we had 10 games for rivalry week and we finished 8-2 straight up, but we'll get into that. Let's just go game by game. First game was the USF Bulls on the road against number 15 UCF. UCF was a 10-point favorite. I picked USF to win outright in an upset. And it was close. They lose by 7. They lose 49-42. This game was back and forth. For majority of the game, it was actually 7-0 UCF. UCF then made it 21-7. This was all in the first quarter, by the way. USF gets the only points in the second quarter with 2 touchdowns, although they did miss a point after, so it was 21-20 UCF at the half. UCF makes it 28-20 with a touchdown early in the third. USF gets 2 touchdowns within a minute of each other later in the third quarter to take a 34-28 lead. UCF gets a touchdown halfway through the fourth to take a 1-point lead. Then they add on another one with under 3 minutes to go to make it 42-34. And USF adds on with one play, 83-yard touchdown pass. They tie the game with a 2-point conversion to make it 42-42 with only a minute 40 to go. And then on the ensuing kickoff, the UCF Knights score a touchdown to take the 49-42 lead, which they hang on to win. So we got the pick wrong, as I picked the Bulls to win outright in an upset, but we got the spread right since it was a 10-point spread and I took the Bulls. That brings us to number 7, Georgia. 11-point favorite on the road against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. I picked Georgia to win, which they do. But I did pick Georgia Tech to cover the spread just because it's a rivalry game. Triple option offense eats a lot of clock. I figured Georgia would keep it close, or Georgia Tech would keep it close. But they weren't really able to do it. Georgia jumps out to a 14-0 lead. Georgia Tech makes it 14-7. Georgia kicks a field goal right as time expires to end the half, 17-7. And then they add 3 touchdowns on before the end of the game, which gives us that 38-7 final. So Georgia's just really efficient on their drives. They outgained the Yellow Jackets 471-226, despite the equal time of possession, which is what the triple option does for you. Only 38 yards passing for the Yellow Jackets, but of course that is to be expected. So good game for the Bulldogs. So they're still obviously very much in the playoff picture if they can win the SEC championship game, which we will get into later. So we got the pick right with the Bulldogs winning, but we got the spread wrong because I thought Tech would cover. That brings us to number 9, Ohio State. They were a 12-point favorite on the road against Michigan. This was my upset of the week. I took Michigan to win outright. Michigan played well pretty much all game, but Ohio State pulls away late and they win by 11. So we got the pick wrong and the spread right since Ohio State failed to cover that 12-point spread. Then we had Florida State, 5-point favorite on the road against Florida. This was my lock of the week that Florida State would win and cover that 5-point spread. I said that Florida had obviously given up, and Florida State's got some pretty good players. I thought they would show up and take it to the Gators. That's why it was my lock of the week, and it worked out pretty well. Florida State ends up winning this game by 16, 38-22. Florida actually outgained the Seminoles 280-216, but they had 4 turnovers, no offense in this game to speak of despite all these points. There was a fumble return touchdown for Florida State, an interception return touchdown for Florida State, and then just a lot of short fields. They had a 16-yard drive that ended in a touchdown and a 20-yard drive that ended in a touchdown. So those Florida turnovers just set up Florida State with a lot of points either directly or through short fields. And Florida State wins easily. This game was pretty much over at halftime. Gators kind of made it interesting in going into the fourth, but the Seminoles pulled away. So we got the pick right and the spread right. Then we had the Battle of the Old Oaken Bucket, Indiana at Purdue. I took Purdue. They were a 2.5-point favorite. I picked them to cover that spread, which they do. They win this game 31-14. They actually pulled away pretty early, and Indiana put up some decent fight to come back in this one, but just did not have enough time on the clock. Purdue hangs on for the 31-24 win. So pick right, spread right. And then we had number 1 Alabama, 4.5-point favorite on the road against number 6 Auburn. And I took Auburn to win this game just because I just felt it. Well, Alabama kind of struggled on the road against Mississippi State. Auburn's a much better team than Mississippi State. Big rivalry game on the road. I just felt like Auburn would pull it off. And they do. Not only do they win as a 4.5-point underdog, they win this game by 8 points. They outgain Alabama 408-13. Each team turned it over once. Auburn struck first with a touchdown to go up 7-0. Bama responds with a touchdown in the second. Auburn kicks a field goal as time expires in the first half to go up 10-7. Alabama with a quick touchdown in the third takes a 14-10 lead. Auburn responds with a field goal. They end up adding a touchdown on late in the third to go up 20-14. And then early in the fourth, Auburn adds another touchdown and failed 2-point conversion, which puts them up 12. I said 8. I said they won by 8. They actually won by 12. So they win this game by 2 possessions. Pretty surprising stuff for Auburn. I did pick them to win, but I didn't expect them to win by 12. Anyway, that brought us to Arizona State. I just threw this one in there. Interstate rivalry. Who cares? But Arizona was a 2.5-point favorite. The reason why I put it in there is because I was just very confident in this pick. I wasn't a big believer in Arizona being a good team. So for them to be at a 2.5-point favorite on the road, I just felt like they were going to lose the game. And they do. Arizona State wins by 12, 42-30. Pretty much all we got to say about this one. Then we had number 3 Clemson, a 13.5-point favorite on the road against number 24 South Carolina. I did say Clemson would win this game pretty easily and it would never be close. But I did give South Carolina a little bit of benefit of the doubt at home rivalry game to cover the 13.5-point spread. But they do not. They actually end up losing this game by a final score of 34-10, so not really close at all. Then we had number 8 Notre Dame, a 2.5-point favorite on the road against number 21 Stanford. I said last week Stanford's been playing some really good football. Notre Dame hasn't shown up against good teams, and that trend continues. They go on the road to Stanford and lose this game by 18 points. They actually outgained Stanford by almost 100 yards, 415-328, but they turn it over 3 times. Stanford does not. This game was 7-0 Notre Dame, 14-10 Stanford at half, 17-14 Notre Dame, 17-17, 20-17 Notre Dame going into the fourth, and then 3 straight touchdowns, all within 3 minutes of each other. Just killed the Notre Dame Fighting Irish hopes as Stanford wins this game 38-20, so we got that pick right, and of course the spread right, as they were the underdogs. And then finally we had the Apple Cup, number 13 Washington State on the road against number 17 Washington. I said it, I pretty much called this game. I picked Washington to win, and I believe I mentioned that Washington State would probably get blown out because they just always do in these types of games. But I gave them the benefit of the doubt to cover this 10.5-point spread, and I really shouldn't have. They lose this game 41-14. They turned the ball over 4 times to nothing. Otherwise, it wasn't that big of a blowout or anything. It's just Washington State just turned the ball over. Jake Browning only goes 11 for 17, 93 yards. Washington had 328 yards rushing, and they just kept it on the ground and just destroyed Washington State. That way, Washington State had a negative 24 yards rushing, but they did have 369 pass yards. But Washington State just kept turning the ball over, and that was the story of the game. Washington rolls to an easy victory. So, as I mentioned last week, 8-2 straight up. That puts us to a season total of 73-32. Pretty happy with that. We went 7-3 against the spread, which was much needed. Been having some bad weeks against the spread. So we're now up to a season total of 52-54 against the spread. Got the upset of the week wrong, of course. More than likely going to happen. Which puts us to 3-9 for the upsets on the season. And we got the lock of the week right, which moves us up to 9-4 for the locks. So that brings us to week number 14, Conference Championship Week. I went ahead and threw all 9 conference championship games up. I'm going to go ahead and predict them all. Why not? Sun Belt being the only conference without a championship game. So the first one is Friday night is number 12 Stanford against number 10 USC. USC is a 3.5 point favorite. Stanford's been playing really good football, as I mentioned. They've won 3 in a row, their last loss being a 3-point loss on the road against Washington State. Since then, they beat the Huskies by 8, and they destroyed Notre Dame by 18. Well, kind of destroyed. USC, on the other hand, also been playing pretty good football. They have won 4 in a row. They got destroyed by Notre Dame at Notre Dame. 49-14. Pac-12 championship. The reason why I'm going to go with who I'm going with, USC, 3.5 point favorite. It's my lock of the week that USC wins and covers that spread, is because these teams faced earlier at USC, but USC won that game 42-24. It was only the second week of the season, so take that for what you will, obviously. I think these teams are better. Both teams are better. But not just because USC won. It's hard to beat the same team twice in the same year. But USC just dominated Stanford in that game. USC turned the ball over twice. Stanford didn't turn it over at all. But USC outgained Stanford 623 yards to 342 and won that game 42-24 despite that. And I just don't see Stanford making all that up in 10 weeks' time or 11 weeks, whatever it's been. So I'm going with USC to win and cover that 3.5 point spread. That's my lock of the week. USC will win the Pac-12 championship. Which brings us to the American Athletic Conference Championship. It is number 20 Memphis on the road campus game at number 14 UCF. UCF is a 7.5 point favorite. UCF obviously undefeated, obviously fighting to get into a New Year's Six Bowl. These teams faced off earlier in the year at UCF, and UCF won that game 40-13. Once again, pretty much same philosophy. Not just, hey, this team already beat them, they're going to beat them again. No, but this was a colossal beating. I don't see Memphis making up all that ground, especially on the road. I think UCF will win this game, but I am going to give Memphis credit. They've been really good as of late. That was their only loss of the year, by the way, that blowout against this UCF team. They will show up to this game. They will keep it close. UCF to win, but I will take Memphis to cover that 7.5 point spread. Which brings us to the MAC championship game. It is Akron. Akron. Somehow Akron won their division. Good for them. They're only 7-5, but they went 6-2 in the MAC. Man, you'd have to go back a long way to see the last time Akron won the... What? I'm going to look it up. Let's see the last time Akron won the MAC. I'm guessing at least the 80s. They won the MAC in... Oh, okay. They won in 2005. That's their only time they ever won the MAC, was in 2005. And they've only won the division 3 times, last time being in 2005. So yeah, they have not been a very good team the last 12 years. But hey, look at them. Akron's in the MAC championship against Toledo, who's 10-2. Toledo, a little underrated. I think they should be a top 25 team. They've been really good. Akron, though, I mean, they are Akron. They got destroyed on the road against Toledo earlier in the year, 48-21. I don't think that matters, even though I've used that philosophy for the last 2 games. But regardless of what the score was, I just think Toledo's a much better team, and Toledo will win this game pretty easily. The spread is 21.5 points. I'm actually going to go with Akron to cover that spread. I think they will play up. I think they may even stick around for the majority of the game. But I think Toledo probably wins this game by 14, 17 points. So give me Toledo to win, Akron to cover. Which brings us to the Conference USA Championship. It is 9-3 North Texas on the road, another campus game, against 9-3 Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic is an 11-point favorite. All 3 of their losses came in non-conference games. At Wisconsin, they lost 31-14. Home against Navy, they got absolutely blown out. And on the road against Buffalo, that's not a good loss. But ever since then, they have won 8 in a row and have been a good team. None of those games have been close. Their last 8. They played North Texas earlier in the year at home and won 69-31. So far, all of these conference championship games are rematches of games that weren't even close. So I'm taking FAU to win, and I'm taking FAU to cover that 11-point spread. That brings us to the Big 12 championship, because for some reason there's a Big 12 championship game. I know the reason, but yeah. It's number 11 TCU, 10-2, against number 3 Oklahoma. How hilarious will it be that the Big 12 gets left out of the playoffs last year, so they panic and go, oh, even though we only have 10 teams, we need a conference championship game, even though we have a round-robin regular season schedule. We need a Big 12 championship game to get a playoff team. How hilarious would it be if Oklahoma loses this game and the Big 12 gets eliminated from the playoffs because of the fact that they added this ridiculous conference championship game? Because this year, an 11-1 Oklahoma team with no Big 12 championship game would make the playoffs. They don't have to play this weekend. They're in. But the Big 12, in their panic, added this conference championship game, and if Oklahoma loses it, the Big 12 will be eliminated from the playoffs because of the Big 12 championship game. That will be hilarious. Anyway, this game's in Texas, AT&T Stadium. Oklahoma is a 7-point favorite. Oklahoma's one loss, of course, was at home against Iowa State. These two teams faced just 3 weeks ago in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma won 38-20. So not very close, but I will say this, that was at Oklahoma. Really hard to beat the same team twice. And unlike all these other rematches, that wasn't as big of a blowout. So I think neutral site, Big 12 championship, I think TCU will keep this one close. I am going to go with Oklahoma to win, but I will go with TCU to cover that 7-point spread, probably lose by 4, 5, 6 points, 3, who knows. I'm going to go with TCU to cover, Oklahoma to win. I don't think the Big 12 referees are going to let Oklahoma lose anyway if it does get close. Big 12 will be in a fucking panic if this game is close. They need Oklahoma to win. And I think Oklahoma will win. Oklahoma's going to have to absolutely just choke all over to lose this game to the point that the refs can't help them. Because that happens. You cannot convince me that refs at this point in this season, conferences aren't influencing some of these games. There's too much money, too much reputation involved in the football playoff. That's why there should be 8 teams. 8 teams is just better. It's a better number. You can leave out the debate. And I would like the first round to be on campuses. That'd be awesome. How awesome would it be? Let's see. Like right now, who's number 8? Ohio State, I think. So Ohio State would play Clemson at Clemson. Like that'd be awesome. Anyway, I digress. Then we go to the SEC Championship in Atlanta. It is number 6 Georgia against number 2 Auburn. Auburn is a 2.5-point favorite. Again, another case of a rematch from earlier in the year, and another case of a game that wasn't even close earlier in the year. Auburn won just a couple weeks ago, 40-17 against Georgia. This game is in Atlanta, but I think Auburn will travel well, so it won't be maybe 65% Georgia at most, 60. But once again, this wasn't just a team that beat another team, so they're going to do it again. It was a complete blowout. Too much to make up, in my opinion. I will go with Auburn to win, and the spread's only 2.5 points, so I will go with Auburn to cover. Then we have the Mountain West Championship game. It is Boise State in Boise, campus game, against number 25 Fresno State. Both teams 9-3. Boise State is an 8.5-point favorite. These teams met last week. That's right, these teams just played last week. And now they're in a rematch for the conference championship. Fresno State won last week 28-17, but pretty even game. They only outgained the Broncos by 30 yards, no turnovers for either team, and the Bulldogs pulled away late to win that game by the score they did. So now they're on the road against Boise State. I think Boise State, despite losing by 2 possessions to the same team last week, I mean, it's hard to beat the same team twice in the same year, as I've said. It's even harder to beat the same team 2 weeks in a row. Now they're at home. It's going to be cold weather. looks like it might be raining according to the weather forecast right now, but it's too far away. At night, also, I'm going with Boise to make up that 2-possession loss that they had last week and win this game, but I will go with Fresno State to cover that 8.5-point spread. Then we have the ACC Championship in North Carolina. It is number 7 Miami against number 1 Clemson. Clemson is a 9.5-point favorite. Unlike every other conference championship game so far, these two teams have not played this year. Should be a really good game in my opinion. I think Miami actually does rise up to the occasion and does keep this game close, but I will go with Clemson to win this game, but I am going to go with Miami to cover that 9.5-point spread. And then finally in Indianapolis, Indiana, we have number 8 Ohio State against number 4 Wisconsin. Ohio State is a 6.5-point favorite. Is JT Barrett playing? Probably. Let's see. In terms of my prediction, it doesn't matter if he plays or not. Okay, so as of now, Wednesday night, still no word on whether or not JT Barrett will play, but like I said, I don't think it matters. Ohio State got destroyed at home against Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma's a good team. They got absolutely... can't even think of a word to describe how badly they lost to Iowa. Iowa is a okay team at best. Guess what team Iowa would like to be in terms of the athletes they have and the type of game they want to play? That's right, Wisconsin. Iowa is Wisconsin Junior. If Iowa can destroy Ohio State like they did, Wisconsin should have no problem winning this game. Wisconsin is Iowa on steroids. Not saying they're actually on steroids, relax. So, it wouldn't surprise me if Ohio State does win, but I can't see it. I don't think Ohio State's a great team, to be honest with you. Yes, I'm a Michigan fan. I think that proved it last week. If Michigan had any other quarterback besides John O'Korn, Michigan wins that game, probably by 2 scores. The fact that that game was only 11 points is actually kind of embarrassing for Ohio State. Anyway, Wisconsin's going to win this game. Wisconsin's going to go 13-0. Plain and simple. It's my upset of the week because somehow they're a 6.5-point underdog. So, let's review last week of the season, conference championship game. I have number 1 Clemson winning in a close one against number 7 Miami. So, Clemson is obviously in. I have number 2 Auburn winning in a close one against Georgia. So Auburn will obviously be in. I have Oklahoma winning in a close one against TCU, so they'd be in it. And I have Wisconsin winning in a close one. I didn't say a close one, but it probably will be a close one against Ohio State. So I actually have the top 4 winning their conference championship games, so they would go untouched if this were to happen, obviously. But let's just play a little game here for fun. Georgia and Auburn, I think, is actually the biggest toss-up for the top 4 teams. If Georgia beats Auburn, I just think Georgia gets in. I think this SEC championship game is essentially a playoff game. I think Georgia would jump Alabama and just get in. And obviously they jump Auburn. So at that point you'd probably have, let's say Clemson, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Wisconsin win. Okay, then you're going to have number 1 Clemson still. Oklahoma would move up to number 2. Wisconsin would move up to number 3. And I think Georgia would come into number 4. That would be the top 4 teams. And I think that's the most likely outcome if one of the favorites goes down. Well, Ohio State's a favorite, but you know what I mean. If one of the top 4 teams go down. Let's say Oklahoma loses. In that case, you'll have number 1 Clemson, number 2 Auburn, number 3 Wisconsin, and in my opinion, you would have number 4 Alabama. I think Alabama needs Oklahoma to lose to get in the playoff. I think Ohio State's done. The only possible scenario I see Ohio State getting in is obviously if they win. Ohio State needs to win and Oklahoma needs to lose for Ohio State to even have a chance. But, in my opinion, even if Oklahoma loses, Ohio State doesn't jump Oklahoma. Because Oklahoma beat Ohio State in Ohio State and it wasn't even close. And Ohio State's loss to Iowa is way more embarrassing than what would be Oklahoma's loss to Iowa State. So Oklahoma has a head-to-head win, big, over Ohio State. They have a 3-point loss against Iowa State. Then they would have a loss Probably a close loss, I would assume, against TCU. Then you'd have Ohio State, who got blown out at home by Oklahoma and got absolutely destroyed by Iowa. So in my mind, I wouldn't even put Ohio State above Oklahoma, even if Oklahoma loses. And in that point, I still don't see them jumping Alabama. ACC championship game, SEC championship game, winner's going to be in my opinion. So that's 2 teams we don't even have to worry about. So let's just say Oklahoma loses and Ohio State beats Wisconsin. So I think the 4 playoffs teams in that scenario would be winner of SEC championship game, Georgia or Auburn. Winner of ACC championship game, Miami or Clemson. I think Alabama would move up and take over another spot. And then you're stuck with, does TCU jump Ohio State? No, probably not, because Ohio State would win. But does Ohio State jump Miami? If Miami were the ones that beat Clemson, obviously not. So in that case, do they jump Clemson? Probably not. If Clemson beats Miami, though, yes, they jump Miami. That puts them at 6. If Georgia beats Auburn, though, do they jump Auburn? Nah, I don't know. But let's just say Auburn beats Georgia. So do they jump Georgia? Yeah, now they're at number 5. Alabama moves in with a win, or with a loss from Oklahoma. And then, I don't know if, I think that's the only possible scenario that Ohio State gets in. Ohio State needs to win. And they need Oklahoma to lose. And even then, I'm not sure if they're in, because then you have Clemson, Auburn, Alabama. And then depending on, it depends, because I don't think, if Miami wins, maybe Clemson and Miami both get in ahead of them. I don't know. It will be interesting. But Ohio State needs to win, and they need Oklahoma to lose. That's the only possible scenario. If Oklahoma wins, let's see, that game's at 12:30 p.m. If Oklahoma wins, Ohio State will know whether or not they're in the playoffs, or if they have a chance. Frankly, I think it's all moot, because I think Wisconsin wins, but yeah. At 3, it's a Big 12 game, so who knows, could go 5 hours, but by around 4 o'clock, we should know whether Ohio State's done or not. Because if Oklahoma wins, Ohio State's done. They're not jumping Oklahoma. They're not jumping the winner of the SEC championship game. They're not jumping the winner of the ACC championship game, and they're not jumping Alabama. So, we'll see. Should be interesting. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, everybody who's watched all season. As always, please feel free to comment below with your thoughts on any of my predictions for this week, and any of your predictions. And as always, be sure to subscribe for the next video, which will probably be in a couple of weeks, because we're going to break down all these conference championship games, and I'm going to predict every bowl game. That's right, all 40 whatever there is. I'm going to predict them all. It's going to be like an hour-long video, probably. All right, so please be sure to subscribe so you, of course, get notified of that in your feed. And thank you all for watching, and goodbye.